And here we go. Not- Look
Nice.
at that studio, fancy stuff. What do you think?
Yeah, looks cool. Sounds cool.
Let's see. I'll continue playing with it, and we'll see how that goes.
Hmm.
We're back into we are back into StreamYard after leaving it for a while, and we're actually broadcasting on LinkedIn, which we've been broadcasting on now for about 6 months. But we're also on YouTube, and we're also on Facebook. So how about that?
Cool
Fascinating.
stuff. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Um, I feel that my internet is not working all too good.
Yeah. I was about to ask you about your video. It looks like it's
Very choppy.
yep.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's happening to my video actually. This is very disappointing. Yesterday basically my internet was down a good chunk of the day,
Mm,
which is absolutely horrible. So, and I see that I am frozen
yeah.
completely. So, I'm doing something to try and fix it. Let's see. Hopefully, it gets fixed. So, and we're giving people a chance to join as well.
Nice.
Okay, doke. So, how was your week, Simba? Talk to me.
Okay. My week was good. Um, I've been working on different landing pages with some of our designers, and it's been interesting. And there are also like some sort of like campaigns that we are planning to launch. So that's where I've been focusing much of my time during this week.
Okay, talk to us about the landing pages. What's the goal from the landing page? Where are you getting the inspiration? Talk to us a little bit about that.
That's a very good question.
Hey man, if there's one thing I can do is ask good questions.
Yeah, about the inspiration is I do a lot of research, and before let's say write the copy for the landing page, I look at the previous versions that we once used before, and also obviously I also like look at some of our competitors, how they do their things. Not that I'll be trying like to copy them or something like that, but just to get a sort of an inspiration from them, and to come up with something which is a bit better, and to try to position ourselves in a different way. So yeah, that's all I can say about the inspiration and everything.
Okay, doke. 1 second. I'm trying to fix, by the way, my camera, and I don't know if it's working better or not. It's just kind of
Not yet.
it seems like it's freezing. A good chunk of the time it's just frozen.
Yep.
Sort of interesting. I've been kind of running into this issue lately.
Hmm.
Let's see. So let's do this 1 second again. Audio virtual backgrounds. Yeah, it's interesting. Let me just stop my cam for a second
Sure.
and see if that's going to improve things or not. I wonder why. So, okay, doke. I'm just gonna hold on a second. I've killed this completely. Oh. So I use OBS for the broadcast, and I can see that OBS is what's causing the issue because it just hung up completely.
Mm.
But that's fine. Here we go, because we can always recover. Your virtual camera. Okay, doke. I
Now
think
good.
I think it's much better now. Okay, doke. Okay, so we will do about 40 minutes. How about that of
Yeah.
CRO Live today?
Mhm.
Um, why don't we get started, Simba? And this is the first time we're broadcasting this on YouTube, broadcasting it on Facebook. Facebook is mostly my friends who are going to be watching it. Um, may God help you guys, all the SEO friends that I have, SEO, PPC. But I get to attend their sessions all the time, so I know I'm not by no means an expert on SEO or PPC, but I think I can have an intelligent conversation at least. Um, so now we're going to give them some CRO knowledge so they can have an intelligent conversation about CRO, not to offend anybody, you know. But what questions do we have for this week?
Okay, so this week we have like a bunch of questions. I think we have 8 questions, and most of them they are about A/B testing and experimentation.
Okay.
Yeah, some of the people they think A/B testing is experimentation, but those are two different things.
Hey, yeah, I'm not, I think we talked about that last time. So,
Yeah, yeah, we did. So okay, I'm going to jump to the first question.
mhm.
Yep, it's is 95% confidence to win important in A/B testing?
That's a good question. Is 95% confidence
Hmm.
critical to A/B testing? So let's start from the basics,
Yep.
because people sometimes confuse those confidence. Sometimes people confuse some of these terms. There is
Hmm.
confidence, there is chance to win, and then there's significance. And I see people using them interchangeably,
Hmm.
and it tells me that they don't understand some of those concepts. As a matter of fact, every time I interview a CRO, I'll ask them, you typically aim for 95% confidence, or do you aim for 95% significance when you're running an experiment? Um, and if a CRO understands this, I'm like, okay, it doesn't tell me that he's really good, but understand he has a good handle on statistics. Let's talk about what those mean. And we'll start with confidence, and we'll talk also about chance to win. So whenever you're running an A/B experiment, you are testing an original design versus a challenger, and you want to see if the challenger changes the conversion rate. That's ultimately the goal of the A/B test. Let's say you have a win where the challenger actually increases conversion rate. The question that you should always be asking is this win a random win? It just so happened that we ran the experiment and things just aligned and we end up with a win. Or are we going to get the same consistent results if we run the experiment again, second time and a third time and a fourth time? Um, the assumption is whenever you have a win, which is sort of a little funny, the assumption is that, well, yeah, it was random. It just so happened today, the stars aligned and I had a win. The more confidence you have, the less the chance of having a random win. So a 95% win tells you actually, no, this was not random. And then there's a 95% chance that if you run the experiment again, you will actually end up with the same win. Statisticians might not like the words that I'm using, but I'm just trying to oversimplify it because they will even disagree with what I just said. But I always think of whenever you run results, you're surprised. It's like, oh, well, we have a win over here. And confidence tells you of how the level of surprise that you have. So the assumption is, this was random. I'm surprised. At 95%, you're surprised, like, oh my God. And oh my God, I really have a win over here. That's the way I think of it. And that's what confidence, your confidence in the data. The opposite of confidence is significance, by the way. So when you have 95% confidence, the significance is 5%. And that's the reason why always people confuse the two. So you're always aiming, most of the time, you're aiming for 95% confidence. Chance to win is very similar to confidence, but we use different statistical formulas to calculate chance to win. And it goes back to the fundamental statistical method that you use to analyze your results. So there's two major schools. There's frequentist school, and then there's Bayesian based on statistics. Confidence is with frequentist. Chance to win is with based on statistics or Bayesian statistics. Um, they're not the same exact thing. They allude to the same thing, but the math that we use to calculate them is different. The calculation, I dare say that the calculation behind confidence are a bit easier, a lot easier for somebody who had done both by hand. It's a lot easier to do the confidence calculation. Not easy, but compared to the Bayesian statistics, I will do confidence any day of the week. Okay, so is 95%, because that's the standard that we follow, is that very critical? It's an artificial limit. There is nothing set in stone that says you should always aim for 95%. Of course, the higher the confidence, the more confidence you have in your results. But is 93% a lot worse than 95% confidence? I don't know if it is or if it's not. We aim for 95%, but I will take a 90% confidence. I will take test results that show 90% confidence. Remember that confidence, results confidence or A/B test confidence level comes historically from medical testing, correct? We have a new drug. We need to test the population, how the population reacts to that drug. And comes from scientific experimentation. Now we're doing a scientific experiment. Are we sure that we actually have a solution to a problem? And over the years, the standard that the community had followed is 95% confidence. Here's an interesting point. Think of it from a medical perspective. Let's say we have a drug. It's a cancer. It's a drug for cancer. And we run the test on the population, and we have 80% or even 70% confidence that this drug is going to actually help. It's not the same as 95% confidence.
Mhm.
Would you use this drug or not? It's a very interesting discussion. There's actually papers that say, you know what, it depends on the severity of the disease. So in case of a cancer where the patient is most likely to die, I will take a 70% confidence test results, correct? It's like, listen, the situation is really bad and dire, and we'll try anything and everything, correct? It's a lot different if you're testing, let's say, a drug for cold, where really we need probably high confidence. I'm not going to even take the 95% confidence. I am going to aim for 99% confidence, correct? Okay, so this is when it comes to drugs. How do you implement that if you are thinking about A/B testing? I think also it depends on the page that you are testing, correct? And how critical the page is to impacting your revenue. Let's say you run a test on a cart page and the cart shows an 80% chance to win. Would you implement that variation or would you skip it? That's a very interesting question that you want to ask. To me, the cutoff point is about 85% to have really good, solid insights. But we've implemented, working with our clients, we've implemented tests where we see an 80%, and a 70% chance to win based on statistics. And in those cases, we tell companies that we're working with, listen, you're probably not going to see a lift in revenue. You're not going to see a lift in conversions. You're not going to see an impact on revenue, but we're introducing a design that improves the process. So why don't we do that? So that's kind of the philosophy. So is it set in stone? No, it's not. Do we always follow it? No. But at the same time, we definitely look very closely at it.
I've seen so many people like using the words significance and confidence interchangeably. So you can, if you don't really know this stuff, like you end up getting confused.
I have seen, and it's funny because people just throw it. People like to throw confidence and significance, and they use them and chance to win interchangeably. And it tells me to a good extent how well somebody knows what they're talking about or not. And people, by the way, hate it when I say that, but that's just the reality. If you're still confusing confidence and significance, it's fine because most people don't understand it. But really, if you're an expert in conversion rate optimization, you should be careful what you use.
Okay, so the second question for the day is, what's the difference between A/B testing for revenue and A/B testing for conversions?
Oh man, that's that's a big topic. And again, my camera is lagging, by the way, again.
Yeah.
So that's not good. But okay, so let's answer this question. What is the difference between A/B testing for conversions versus A/B testing for revenue? Conversions are a very discrete event, correct? It either happens or it doesn't happen. It's a 1 or 0, 0 or 1. It's a yes or no. So it's very easy whenever you're implementing an A/B test to measure conversions. Did we increase conversions? Did we impact conversions? Did it go up or down? Revenue, on the other hand, there's different ways to measure revenue. So you can be measuring the average order value. You can be measuring the revenue per visitor, revenue per session, revenue per visit, many different metrics that you can be looking at. Revenue is a very continuous number. my average revenue, my average order value was 197 today. In those 2 hours, it's like 200 tomorrow. It's 190. What is the difference in revenue that you say, well, there is significance, and actually this variation actually impacted our revenue? The math in determining a winner whenever you're doing price testing is a lot more complex than the math that you use whenever you're determining a winner based on conversion, just due to the nature of revenue versus conversions, due to the fact that one is very discrete and one is continuous. Whenever we are testing, the primary metric for us, whenever we're testing with a company, is looking at conversion. That's what matters to us. That's what we look at. That's what we evaluate very carefully. We do look at revenue numbers and we use them as supporting metrics, but we don't make our determination based on those. And I always tell companies that we're working with, a 5% up or down in your average order value and your RPV, revenue per visit or per visitor, doesn't really matter. Revenue becomes a lot interesting if you cross that 15, 20% threshold, where you're saying, oh, wow, there's quite a change in revenue. This variation is actually introducing a major change in revenue. The only caveat that I want to add to that, there's always the only caveat, and then five caveats later. The only caveat that I want to add to that is that whenever you're doing analysis for revenue, should exclude what we call large orders and small orders. So let's say I run a test, I have 1,000 conversions, and I'm now evaluating the revenue for the control versus the revenue for the variation. You want to remove, sometimes you have large orders that can skew your data completely. So you want to move those out and do your analysis. So that requires either a software that does that for use. Omniture, for example, does that, or requires you to download the data and do the data massaging using Excel or Google Sheets.
So our next question kind of relates to what you just talked about. It's about is experimentation only about revenue uplift?
No, experimentation has a lot more, correct? Ultimately, I'd say experimentation, there's two aspects to it. One is understanding the customers, really about providing those customers a better experience. That has nothing to do with revenue. Yes, when you understand the customers, you provide them with a better experience, so that results in revenue, correct? Everything ties into revenue. Maybe all the roads lead to Rome at the end. But some of your experimentation have different metrics and different goals. Sometimes some of your experimentation is about increasing the lifetime value. Sometimes it's about reducing churn. Sometimes it's about showing more interactivity with the website. There are many goals. And that's the reason I think it's very critical that whenever you're working in an experimentation program, that you spend time at the very beginning of every quarter to say, okay, what are the KPIs that I need to be reporting on, or my boss is going to be reporting on, and how my experimentation is going to come into play to support some of those KPIs. Now, I've seen KPIs that range from, oh, we want to increase our revenue this quarter, oh, we want to increase customer retention, we want to increase engagement. I've seen KPIs to such a granular level to say we want to increase the number of product page views. I have seen KPIs from all over the place, and some of them I would actually argue that were not even KPIs in the first place. They're more metrics, because to me a KPI is a metric that has a direct business value, and that's kind of the difference between what a KPI is and what a metric is. But that's a whole other discussion.
I was going to ask you about the KPIs that you can use to track the success of an experimentation, but you've kind of touched on that. So
yeah,
I think I'll just have to move on to the next question, which is there an instant where you can implement the variation that failed in the test? I think this question comes from the fact that you once said that there might be a winning variation, right, in the test, but you don't implement it because the brand it doesn't align with what the brand objectives. So is there an instant where a failed? I kind of answered myself. Okay, you heard the question. So
yeah. No, I mean there are instances where you run an experiment and you have a losing variation, and you come and you say, you know what, I am going to implement this losing design, but one is I will implement it because it's more of a business decision than an optimization decision. Correct? That's number one. Number
Mhm.
two, I am implementing it and I know the cost of implementing it, so I am making a data informed decision.
Mhm.
And most of the time, whenever you're implementing a losing variation, because you have a bigger business objective that you are heading towards. So you're like, okay, here is the direction that we are going with. I'll give an example from a company that we were working with, and what they the direction that they were heading in is they wanted to encourage more people to place orders online, pick up in store. That's the direction. That's the business philosophy. Here's where we are going to go. So some of our testing had to support that. And although, I can do a test that increases conversions and some of our variations, but because you wanted to do this order online, pick up in store, some of the losing variations were actually a lot better for that. So we actually moved in that direction. So it is important that the testing aligns with the business goals and that we understand that, okay, here are the business objectives. Another store, and again, it's always interesting whenever you have offline stores, so versus the online stores. We've done testing with a program where the online store was doing so well that actually impacted the offline stores, and then we start hearing from the managers of the offline store saying, what are you doing to us? You are hurting us. So I still remember, a conversation with the VP of e-commerce where he's like, "Yeah, we need to reduce the conversion rate on our site, and we need to drive more visitors to the offline stores. So how do we do that?" So in this case, we're not increasing the online conversion, but the idea was to drive more visitors to the offline store. So again, having that conversation early on and understanding the metrics that you want to track and the KPIs becomes very critical.
Mm, That's a good one. So on Tuesday, I posted something about testing to win versus testing to learn, and someone reached out to me in my inbox on LinkedIn,
Okay. Okay.
and then he asked me like a very good question. I gave him my answer, but I then
Okay.
told him that I will ask this question during the live CRO Live Hour, and you have to hear what Khalid has to say about it. So the question is, how can you balance between testing for insights and testing to win?
So it's a really good question. Um, there is the theory of how conversion optimization experimentation programs should run, and then there's the reality, and I like to talk about the reality.
Mhm.
In a theoretical world, we do as much testing as we can, and the stakeholders and the executives will support us, and they'll say, go ahead and do whatever testing you want. Most of
Mhm.
us are not working in scientific research labs.
Mhm.
um, I think whenever you're starting a program, the first 6 months are very critical because you need to prove the ROI on the program. And proving the ROI on the program comes in from two different things. One is the revenue impact that the program generates. Number two is the insights, by the way. But the main metric that matters during the first 6 months, the main one, is the revenue impact. And I think the faster people working in experimentation CRO recognize that, the easier their life will be. At some point, we used to have clients who would work with us for 6 months, sometimes 5 months, and we're like, what's happening here? We're doing some really good work. We're doing extra hours. We're pulling interesting experiments. But really, what matters to them is, well, what's the ROI? Now, after you prove the ROI and you actually, what I say, you've earned a seat at the table. That's what you need to do as somebody who's running an experimentation program. Then you start testing for insights and you start testing for revenue. What is the split there? I think really it's like, it could be like, it really depends. I think the split there will depend on the culture of the company, correct? It could be 30-70, it could be, 40-60, or it could be 50-50. With most companies that we work with, in all honesty, I would say it's closer to 30-70, 30% for insights, 70% for revenue impact. Um, there are instances where we go for 50-50. But in those cases, whenever we're testing for an insight, we are able to build on top of that. We say, okay, here, we need to really understand your visitors and what messaging works better for them. That's the insight I'm looking. Now, if I manage to generate a lift as I'm looking for that insight, great. But I'm testing different messaging. Eventually, that insight should drive more successful testing that generates more revenue. So that's, I think, kind of the reality that we deal with, away from Oh, just to learn. I always tell people, I'm like, you're always learning. Yeah, yeah. I like what you said. You're always learning, man. If you're not learning from your experimentation, win or lose, then you have a problem. I'm
Mm.
always learning, but I like to win and learn at the same time. So
Okay, that's a good answer. That's a good answer. It's closer to what I told him. I would say, but
will become modification. Hey, like send him the video afterwards.
yeah, yeah. So, how do you conduct a post-test analysis between like a winner versus a loser? How do you conduct?
That's a good question. You always want to ask post test, what did we learn? What was the change that I made in this variation, and how did people react to it? And that could be a very interesting discussion, because sometimes, in theory, as you are introducing new challenges to the control, you're trying to make the life of people better. And as a result of that, you're trying to improve your website conversion rate, generate more revenue. And although that's the fundamental engine behind the testing that you're doing, sometimes people tell you, oh, we don't like actually this new variation or the new way that you've suggested. With a winner, it's easy. Okay, I had a hypothesis and I've generated a win. Perfect, we're done. With a loss, it's a lot more challenging. Was the hypothesis wrong? Was it the way I've implemented the hypothesis wrong? And sometimes it's very interesting, because you think the hypothesis is correct, you think the implementation is correct, but people surprise you in ways. I'll give you an example from what I would call a very interesting experiment that we've launched. So, e-commerce website, we're on the product page, people are clicking on the add to carts. And previously, basically the cart will show the number of items that were added, and that's it. And we said, you know what? Based on some of the usability testing that we've done and talking to users, people will not always noticing that they've added items to the cart. We've also discovered that because people place an order and then they complain that, hey, why did you ship me 2 items? Well, we shipped 2 items because your order actually had 2 items. Didn't you notice as you went through the checkout process they've actually added 2 items? What happened was people click on the add to cart, they add an item to the cart, they don't notice that it was added, and they click on another add and another the item again to add it to the cart again. And then there was a problem with the cart design because they don't notice the quantity, and then they place the order and then they complain. So we're like, okay, listen, we can solve this by letting people know that you've actually added an item to the cart, and we can do that in different ways. One way is we have a small layover that shows like, hey, your item has been added, and it was very small and gentle. A second way is we can actually show a mini cart, correct? And you've seen those on Shopify websites where you show mini cart slides to show the item, shows you kind of the cart that you've added.
Mm-hmm.
A third way is to show a little bit more like on a pop-up to say, hey, your items have been added, and it gives you an option. Do you want to navigate to the cart page? A fourth option is to actually, after somebody adds an item to the cart, to take them to the cart page. All different ways to implement the hypothesis. What's interesting, the first challenger, which was a small layout, like a kind of overlay that shows that items were added, you can almost miss it, by the way. You can almost miss it if you're not noticing, because it was just very gentle. It's what I call a small nudge.
Mm.
That actually reduced conversion rates by almost 15%, which is extremely surprising. And I don't use the word extremely lightly over here, because I'm like, most of the time people would miss that. As a matter of fact, when we were doing QA, my first question to the team is like, okay, well, like, when we have a variation that reduces conversion rate by that much, I tell them there's a bug in the implementation of the A/B test. So I'm doing the QA and the quality control with the team to validate, and I'm like, oh, what happened? I couldn't even tell. They're like, oh, no, there's this small overlay. And I'm like, I even missed it. Yet it reduced conversion rates by 15%. So that poses many questions, by the way. Why such a small change generates such a jarring reduction in conversion rates? That's a very, very good question to ask. And did we miss something, or was the hypothesis incorrect, or is it now by telling people that we've added an item to the cart, which is what people wanted in the first place, is causing more fears, uncertainties, and doubts? I don't have an answer, because we're still kind of investigating and asking more questions, correct? But that's kind of the post-test analysis, where you have a loss, an unexpected loss in this case, and you say, okay, so hey, what happened here? How can I actually build my next experiment based on the insights I've gathered from this loss that I've had?
Mm, mm. That's a good one. So today we're kind of like a bit fast, so we're on the last question.
Oh, good. Okay.
Mhm. So the last question is, how do you then? Okay, let me put it this way. You have worked with different clients. Some were kind of like maybe doing experimentation for the first time. How do you promote like a culture of experimentation within your team?
That's a really good question. How do you promote culture of experimentation within the team?
Mhm.
Promoting experimentation happens before you start working on experimentation. And this is very critical because you have to have a level of buy in from different people who are going to be involved or looking at the experimentation program that you're running. And that means that buy-in needs to happen from the very top of the food chain to the bottom of the food chain. I have seen companies where the CEO and the CTO and the CMO want to run experimentation, but you had a UX designer or a developer who does not believe in A/B testing or experimentation, and the whole program comes to a halt because they are slowing things down and they're like questioning the data and questioning the analysis, and that just kills the program. I've also seen programs where the the directors and the managers actually want to run experimentation, but top management doesn't even understand what's going on. We don't have buy-in from them, and the experimentation comes to a stop. So nowadays, whenever we're talking to companies, it's a very transparent and honest conversation. Who are we going to be working with? Who's going to approve? I want to talk to everybody. I was just on a call earlier and I'm talking to the CMO and I'm talking to the CTO. And I told them, like, oh, well, how are you running your current experiments? They said, well, our CEO comes up with ideas. I'm like, and I asked them directly, I'm like, well, if you hire us, we come up with the ideas. Is that going to be an issue for the CEO? Um, and I need to be very clear with them on that. And they both said no. Actually, the CTO said, no, it's not going to be an issue. And he was very clear as well. And I love that clarity, by the way, where they know what they're walking into. We know what we are walking into. So that's kind of from the onset of running a program. I think explaining the process, explaining the statistics to everybody that's involved is very critical, because one of the worst things that could happen is you start the program and then people start questioning A/B testing fundamentally. And, oh, it's not valid and the results are not accurate. And that's very easy, by the way. You don't have to have a master's degree in statistics to be able to explain A/B testing and statistics, but you should be able to understand what confidence is. And we've been using A/B testing for like over a century now. Every medicine that we take, has like A/B testing, like some A/B testing was done in it to actually show whether it's going to help us or not. So when people say, "Oh, I don't believe in A/B testing," I'm like, "Well, maybe you shouldn't be taking any medicine, because really everything that you deal with relies on A/B testing." Um, that's the second portion. The third portion is this post-test analysis is very critical. What are the insights that I'm gaining, and sharing that with everybody at every level, exciting people about the wins, even like exciting them even about the losses, and exciting them about the insights that you are getting from every experiment. Here's what we've learned. So you should constantly be sharing the results of your experimentation, the insights that you're gaining. That should be shared regularly with the project team, with the executive team. A fourth level is actually getting executives and executive buy-in by having them participate and throwing ideas into the mix. So you should have a clearinghouse, if I may say, to get ideas from different team members and test them out. And sometimes, like, telling people, like, hey, we're about to run this experiment. It has 4 challengers. So, hey, which one do you think is going to win? And what's the rationale there? So getting people excited. So part of it, it really is about developing that culture of experimentation, correct? Sometimes people struggle with that. Let me mention something. Designers and developers are fundamentally built on the concept that I'm going to get something perfect, I'm going to deploy it, and then I'm going to move on to the next portion because I don't have enough time to look at the section again. Us as optimizers, as people who work in experimentation, say, oh, I'm going to fix this site, this page, then I'm going to come back and fix it again in 3 weeks, and I'm going to come back and fix it the third time in 6 weeks, and I'm constantly fixing it. So I'm always tinkering with the page because I have some hypothesis on how to make it better. That's fundamentally how we work. And designers, developers, sometimes upper management struggle with that concept. So you need to be able to explain that to them very clearly, that we're always testing, we're always improving. The page that you see today is going to look different in 3 weeks from now, and it's going to look a lot different 6 weeks from now. So we're always trying to improve it, day in, day out. Very critical to explain that to everybody, get buy-in from everybody. And it's very critical also, maybe we'll finish with this point, to look at the detractors, people who don't believe in experimentation, and understand what are the issues that they have, and explain those issues. Sometimes run into situations where people start questioning data. And I always tell my team members, if somebody questions the data once, I will explain to them. If they question the data twice, I will explain it to them again. If they question the data the third time, then I'll tell them, listen, we need to stop over here, because obviously it's not about the data, but you probably have a more fundamental problem with experimentation and A/B testing. So let's bring it to the table and let's have that discussion very clearly. We used in the past, sometimes we used to avoid those conversations. And I tell my team nowadays, don't avoid this conversation, have it head on. Let's address that very clearly to say, hey, I don't want to defend the data. I find myself, I don't want to be in the position where I defend the data from people who should be looking at it and analyzing it, as opposed to questioning it, because questioning the data kills any conversation. And I would tell them, hey, what are some of the issues that you're running into? I was on a call a couple of weeks ago. We had a winning design, and one of the gentlemen who was on the company's side said, oh, well, the winning design is absolutely horrible. It doesn't match our brand. I can't believe we've done that. All of your experiments, have that problem. And our team members just sort of listened and just didn't, because we had a win, and they said, oh, well, we shouldn't respond. And I'm like, no, actually, I'm sorry. I told them, let's stop the conversation, because I think actually he might have a valid point over here. And I told him, let's stop the conversation. And I asked him, can you show me when you say that all of our winning experiments have a problem? Can you explain this? So he did not expect me to push back at him in this way, where he said, show me and explain to me. So I think that just made him, and he's it's like, well, maybe not all of them. I'm like, it's fine. Listen, if some of our experiments have a problem, tell me, because we can address those problems, but don't throw a blanket statement. So he pulls one of the experiments and he says, well, look at the font over here, and it doesn't match the font. And look at this, the text is going over 2 lines. And I told him, so that's the issue that you're seeing. He said, yes, that's absolutely horrible. It doesn't look professional. My answer to him was twofold. One, I agree with you. It doesn't look nice, and we should have caught this. And you should be able to own up to that mistake, correct? It's like, hey, this is not good. Number 2 is 99.999% of your visitors will never notice it. You're noticing it because you're an expert designer and you're looking at this very carefully. To your visitors, it's just an element that they don't notice. More importantly, this design that we've done generated an 8% lift in conversions with a 99% chance to win. How about now, because we're always improving, we go in and fix it some more, and we'll fix those minor tweaks. Having those conversations in a very open and honest way helps and brings everybody on the same page.
Mm-hmm. Okay, just to squeeze in one more follow-up question to this is, experimentation, in most of the time, is usually seen or considered as a marketing initiative or marketing effort, something like that. 2 weeks ago, I remember you were talking about how experimentation can benefit different departments, within the same organization.
Yeah.
So isn't it much difficult to convince other departments to use the insights that they get from experimentation?
No, I mean, it's sort of interesting. So experimentation definitely used to be a very marketing focused effort. I'm seeing a switch, which I'm not clear on how I feel about, where I'm seeing kind of more the technical
Mhm.
teams move into experimentation.
Mhm.
Um, I don't think experimentation is successful when marketing team runs it without getting everybody involved. I don't think experimentation will be successful if IT and CTO runs it. I think experimentation is very successful when you break the silos, and instead of having, like, two different teams on two different sides of the building doing work that the other side doesn't know, you need to mix them together.
Mhm.
Right, where now, like, the teams that are handling, so there's somebody from marketing, there's somebody from design or UX, somebody from product, and somebody from the technical team are working together. Now, in order for you to achieve and, like, convince everybody, first you broke the silo. Number two is you start talking about business objectives. If the technical team single focus is like, oh, I need to release this feature, I need to look at, like, the code and the infrastructure, and they're not thinking about the business impact, you're not going to be able to get experimentation to be successful, correct?
Mhm.
If the UX team is not thinking about revenue, you're not going to get experimentation to work. If the marketing team doesn't understand, and I have to say this, if the marketing team does not understand the technical challenges of running experimentation, then experimentation is not going to succeed. So everybody has to come to the table, understanding that we have a business goal and we're trying to achieve that business goal. And experimentation is just merely a tool that we are using to achieve that goal. I think that's what is critical to for the experimentation program to succeed.
Mm. Yep, I think those are the questions that I had for you this week.
Awesome. So I enjoyed this. I think I'm having problems with my. I can see I'm having a problem um, with my analysis. So, by the way, we got a question over here. What are your thoughts on trend-based analysis of A/B testing? I've seen clients talk about how test has been positive since the starting of the test. So let's conclude, regardless of the sample size. Oh, let's answer this question.
Mhm.
Um, Avoid doing trend analysis that the test is trending correctly. You run enough A/B tests that you see a particular trend and you think that you have a winner. You take that winner, you implement that winner, and then you don't see an impact in the conversion rate. And then, as a result of that, 3-4 months later of doing this consistently, people start questioning A/B testing, and then they start questioning your statistics. We always run our A/B tests for a minimum of the sample size that we predetermined. The one time that we stop an A/B test earlier is when we have what we call an early stop, where a certain challenger to the control is causing a major reduction in conversion rates, is dropping conversion rates by 25, 30%. So we have those metrics, by the way, predetermined prior to running an A/B test. Post running an A/B test, no, we are going to be running until we hit the sample size. Sometimes we even ignore the sample size if the sample size is small. Imagine you're running an A/B test for an eBay. You can actually, the sample size, you can reach sample size, a good sample size within a day. We're not going to run an A/B test for a day, so we run it for a period of time. So we'll run it for a week or 2 weeks. So that's the other thing that we do. We're always looking for a longer time period to make sure that we have a solid result. Another thing that we do, which is a little bit different, is let's say you run an A/B test and you have 4 challengers to the control.
Mhm.
All sounds good. We have a winner. We're happy. There are many instances where we say, oh, well, although we have a winner, we're going to relaunch this A/B test and we're going to reduce the number of challengers. So we have the control. We have a clear winner, correct? So we're going to run that. And we might pick one of the other variations. One of them might be really bad, had lost really bad, but we think the hypothesis in it is really good. So we run it again. This gives us a more solid data, a more comfort in our data. It's slower, correct? Because now, like, you really need to be, like, you're running the test twice, but when you have a winner, you really have a winner. So we're confident in our data. And those discussions that we're having with companies that we work with, that although V4 had lost, we actually think the hypothesis there is really interesting. We want to run it again. Maybe we tweak it, but we want to run it again. The final thought is the the statistics or the statistical analysis or the statistical method that you're using or your A/B testing software is using to determine a winner also matters in terms of how many variations you introduce. So let's say you're using an A/B testing software, Optimizely, for example, that is a frequential, uses frequential statistics. The more variations that you introduce in a test, the higher the chance is of having a false positive. What does that mean? I have a control original design. I introduce 4 variation, and my A/B testing software uses frequential statistics. The chance, and you have a winner, but because you have 4 variations and you're using frequential statistics, the chance at 4 variations of having a false positive is 50%. So your winner is really most likely not a winner, which is a scary thought. That's the reason we run the test again. I mean, our A/B testing things telling us that we have a winner. I remember this story. I joke about it from back in 2009, 2010, where we ran an A/B test, frequential statistics for O'Reilly, where we had 100 variations. It was an MVT test, 100 variations, 100 challengers to the control. The chance of false positive was at 99%. We didn't really understand statistics back then. We thought we had 23 winners. We didn't have 23 winners. We had 23 false positives. That's the reason we run. The goal is to validate someone we think we have a winner. We actually have very high confidence that we actually have a winner. I hope that answered the question, Fennel.
Nice.
Awesome. Okay, with that, I think we are done. Thank you, everybody, for watching us. I will solve the problem that I have with my camera, hopefully next week. Thank you, everyone, and until next time.
Bye.